This beautiful Saturday morning on the show that starts the weekend. It's alive and kicking. Good morning. My name is Fat Boy. Now, you know that here in Uganda, we've been looking for various ways of fighting HIV. I mean, it's still a very serious issue. And, the prevalence rates seem to be increasing. And so we have been looking for ways, outside of the box ways that we can apply to deal with this problem. Now, in 2007, results from 3 large randomized clinical trials in Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa showed that medically performed circumcision is safe and can also reduce men's risk of HIV infection by 60%. Now, based on this evidence, the World Health Organization began recommending voluntary safe male circumcision as an essential part of HIV prevention programming, especially in countries like Uganda, where the HIV prevalence not only remains high, but seems to be increasing even. Now, the male circumcision program in Uganda was launched in September of 2010, and they're targeting 80% of uncircumcised men, hoping that by 2015 we might have circumcised 4.2 million Ugandan men. It's projected that circumcising all these men will halve the country's HIV incidence. And it seems to me like this is a good approach to take. Well, so we've been encouraging men to get circumcised since 2010. Now, in his end-of-year message in 2012, President Museveni said that these campaigns in favor of this method were misleading Ugandans into unchecked sexual behavior. Of course, his skepticism or his misgivings aren't really shared with the many of the people in the scientific community, and also those who deal with international health policy, who advocate for safe male circumcision as another preventative measure which offers up to 60% protection from HIV. They think it's a useful addition to the other things that we're doing to fight HIV. And you might recall on Sanyu Breakfast one time we interviewed one advocate, who told us that it was a good strategy that we should adopt. And you might have seen campaigns and billboards encouraging men to get circumcised. They even got wives involved to encourage their husbands to go get circumcised so that we can all sort of work towards reducing HIV. Now, there seem to be other people that share our president's reservations about the circumcision strategy. And on the line, I have Bob O'Hara, who is the chairman of the African Circumcision Advisory Committee and news director for A Voice for Men. Good morning, Bob. Are you there?
Hi, how you doing, Fat Boy?
Good. Nice to have you. You're calling from the U.S., are you?
Yes, I'm calling from Alexandria, Virginia. This is just south of Washington, D.C.
Okay, so maybe you can just start by telling us who you are.
I'm the chairman of the newly formed African Circumcision Advisory Committee. We are a group of people that are dedicated to publicizing what the reality is about voluntary male circumcision, medical male circumcision in Africa is all about. And I am also the news director of A Voice for Men. And I have been researching this topic for about a year and a half now. And when I started researching it, I came to the conclusion very quickly that the Orange Farm studies were critically flawed.
When you say Orange Farm studies, Bob, do you mean one of the 3 major studies that were carried out prior to this policy?
Yes, this is one of the 3 studies, but all 3 of those studies, the randomized control studies, were all seriously flawed. And in fact, if you look at the characters behind it and the politics behind it and the money behind it, there's more than ample evidence to strongly suggest that this is not about stopping the spread of HIV and AIDS in Africa at all. It's about money, political power, and also gender ideology.
Okay, Bob, if I might ask, there seems to have been several other studies that corroborate the view that circumcision can reduce the incidences of HIV transmission from infected women to men by up to 60%. There's at least one study in Uganda also that was carried out that confirms this. Are you saying that all these various studies that have been conducted that confirm this, that they are all flawed?
Yes, they are. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you that the serious flaws we have. I'm talking about the 3. We're talking about particularly the 2 studies, the one that was done in Kenya and the one that was done in Uganda. I'm going to tell you the flaws. First of all, there were a lot of circumcised men that dropped out of the studies. this is a serious problem because people who, it's like testing a new drug or something like that, people who don't do well in the studies tend to drop out, and that skews the results. And also, there's another big critical flaw. There's about four or five of them I'm going to go through really quickly. Circumcised men were told to abstain from sex for 6 weeks, and we're given condoms. And the non-circumcised men were not. Clearly, that's a serious problem. Then the studies were stopped early once they got the numbers that suggested that there was a 60% reduction in the chance of getting HIV. They stopped them early, and they offered circumcision to all the non-circumcised participants that were still participating. And this forever did away with the ability to truly understand, to truly know whether or not circumcision had a lifelong benefit. So when they say it was a lifelong benefit, they terminated all these studies within 24 months, which is a very short time.
All right, Bob, let's go into the science a little bit. I mean, our understanding, or the common understanding, is that, there's a part of the male genitalia where the skin is very soft and porous, and that the virus is known to go through this area, and that is how, infection becomes more likely if you're to have unprotected sex. Now, we're told that circumcision essentially leaves behind a scar that sort of hardens the tissue around there, making it harder for the virus to penetrate. Surely that should offer some protection, no?
Well, there's there's two reports written that I like to feature when I talk about this. One was written by the African Journal of, I'm thinking of the name here real quick. The Journal of Public Health in Africa, and it was written by a couple of people from the University of Michigan State University, and the title of this report was "How the Circumcision Solution in Africa Will Increase HIV Infections." It's a very, very good report that they wrote that basically talked about the actual what the foreskin does, and how there's no biological plausibility that saying removing the foreskin stops HIV infection. And what they suggest is, they didn't talk about actually the scar tissue or anything like that, but what they suggested is that the mucus within, or that the actual cells within the foreskin, which proponents of male circumcision say are susceptible to HIV infection, they pointed out several studies that were done years ago that said that these cells were basically they were more immune to HIV infection, also other viral infections.
All right. So is your view different from our president's, in which he thinks that
sure.
it might? I don't know whether he doubts its actual medical efficacy. His concern seems to be more about how this might impact behavior, where someone might think, hey, I'm circumcised, so therefore I'm probably protected, and then he might start to engage in more reckless sex than he otherwise would have if he was not circumcised. So his is more a concern about how people's behavior will change after the procedure. Yours is yours related to that, or does it go beyond, and you're even disputing the actual efficacy of the procedure for preventing the virus from infecting a guy?
Absolutely. The dispute over the actual efficacy is much wider and much more. There's a lot more controversy over it than I think a lot of your listeners realize. Now, the president is right. The compensatory behavior is a big problem because they're telling people that this is as applicable as a really good vaccine, and it's really not. But the actual results of the survey are held in serious question by a growing number of medical professionals who are epidemiologists who study this kind of thing.
All right.
By no means is there a consensus amongst the medical community that this is a good way to prevent the spread of HIV/AIDS.
All right.
There are a lot of people saying a lot of bad things.
Okay. All right, thanks, Bob. I'm going to ask you to hold the line, and I want to pursue that argument a little bit further. It seems to me
Sure.
almost conspiratorial to imagine that
Sure.
all these contrary views would be suppressed if it were not actually the case that this thing works. I don't know. And then also you touched on possible policy motives, maybe political motives that I'm interested in exploring. So
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind staying on the line, I think we'd like to get back to you in just a bit. Is that okay?
Great, yes, absolutely.
All right, do stay tuned to Live and Kicking. And just so you know, I did try to get in touch with lots of people on the pro-circumcision side. It proved not to be successful. I kept getting tossed around. Now, if you're listening and you are one such person, feel free to join the conversation. You can call me on 343-660 or 343-672. In 2007, results from 3 large randomized clinical trials in Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa showed that medically performed circumcision on guys is safe and can reduce men's risk of HIV infection by up to 60%. And based on this evidence, the World Health Organization, they began recommending voluntary safe male circumcision as an essential part of HIV prevention. And so we've been circumcising on a large scale since September of 2010 here in Uganda. We're hoping that we might circumcise 4.2 million guys by 2015. And in doing so, we might actually succeed in halving the country's HIV incidence. Considering our prevalence rates seem to be increasing, it would seem to be a good thing that we add yet another strategy on top of all the other things we're doing to deal with HIV. Of course, the president's concerned. He thinks this might encourage reckless behavior. I mean, after all, a guy might think, whoops, I'm circumcised, so I'm fully protected. Officials on the medical side, the experts are saying, no, guys, this just means it's additional protection, but you must still, wear condoms and be faithful and all of these things. I have on the line another person who's equally skeptical about this campaign. Is Bob O'Hara from A Voice for Men in the United States. Bob, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, welcome back. So earlier you were sharing with us your skepticism about some of the studies that seem to show that there would be a reduction in HIV, like acquiring the virus. If you are circumcised, you expressed some doubts about the validity of the studies. And you said that there were other areas in which you thought the studies were flawed?
Well, the overwhelming, the biggest negation of these studies is when you take data from circumcised versus uncircumcised men from all over the world, especially here in the U.S., you find that there is absolutely no benefit to getting circumcised when it comes to contracting HIV or for any other venereal disease for that matter. And what the people who are pushing this program, they're relying on these 3 studies, which have critical flaws in them, which I've discussed just a few of them, and they suppress the data that's the much better empirical data from all around the world that suggests there's absolutely no benefit. And they don't tell people this. They suppress that in the press, and they never talk about it, and when they promote this program. And this is that's a very scary thing. That's just that right there negates everything that they say that these studies suggest.
Okay,
along with all the critical flaws.
Okay, Bob. But the thing is, I mean, we do rely on the wider scientific medical community to advise us on some of these things. And
sure.
So how can it be that all over the world there appears to be a consensus, at least that's what we seem to be led to believe, that this thing is effective? How can it be that, if it's as flawed as you claim it is, that the counter arguments aren't being, like, they're not succeeding in swaying the policy in any way?
Well, first of all, there's anything but a consensus, and I mentioned the study I mentioned before, but also there's another. The guy, the editor of the South African Medical Journal, his name is Dr. Daniel J. Nkayana, and he's written about this, and he's just one of a number of many voices, including the people at the Michigan State University, namely Dr. Robert S. Van Howe and Dr. Mitchell R. Storms. There's a growing number of people that are looking at these. They're looking at these studies, and they're just hacking the pieces. There's really a lot of debate about this that I'm sure maybe your listeners, a lot of people in Africa don't know about, because the entire discourse concerning this, or most of the discourse concerning this program that they're running there, is dominated by the people who are making money from it. And it isn't just a little bit of money; it's a lot of money.
Can you go into a bit of can you go into detail, a little bit of detail on that? What do you mean money? Do you mean like in form of aid and that sort of thing?
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm giving you a list of some of the stakeholders here. literally like a who's who of money and political power all over the world. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has given, I think, $500 million to this. The U.S. government through PEPFAR and UNAID
PEPFAR, yeah,
they follow in all kinds of money. The World Bank is giving all kinds of money, and we're talking like the last count, I think, is about $1.5 billion.
So I said. Okay, so with all of that money in circulation, you're saying that this might motivate some people to sort of support the view that circumcision is an effective policy to adopt.
Yes, and here's why. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Male latex condoms in this country, in the U.S., stopped the AIDS epidemic in its tracks. That's what happened. It is the male latex condom. That is what stops the spread of AIDS. There's no other device or method, besides abstinence, of course, that stops AIDS better than the male latex condom. The problem is that there's not a lot of money handing out condoms. They only cost about 3 cents in the clinical setting. And with the money they're throwing at this circumcision campaign, you can literally pave the streets several times over of every single city and town in Sub Saharan Africa. But they're not doing that because when you get a circumcision regime put in place, you're building infrastructures. More and more people getting put on the payroll, and if there's a group of people in particular that are benefiting most about this, and they're the ones that control the entire public discourse about it.
Okay, well, go ahead.
And if you do some research, after research on it, it became pretty obvious that what was going on is all this money is going into some pre-existing organizations and some organizations that are popping up.
Okay, but Bob, come on. Bob, we're talking about the UN here. Honestly, I mean, these are the aren't they the custodians of everything positive in the world? I mean, why would they back something like this if they didn't think it would help?
Again, it's just okay. It's not just the money; it also has to do a lot with political power and political influence. If the UN were just to pass out condoms, well, that wouldn't. They have other goals, they have other desires, and it's not always. The UN is not. It has its own agenda, and if it can gain influence in ways that it wouldn't have been able to do otherwise through normal political channels, which are more legitimate, it's going to do that. And again, there are people. I mean, there are crooks in the UN, like there are crooks in any other organization. The UN is not an infallible organization.
All right. So the question that interests me now is whether or not it makes a difference. If I'm circumcised, so what? If I carry on being faithful and I carry on using a condom, the scientists are saying that this isn't 100% proof. Get circumcised, it'll reduce your risk even further. So if I get circumcised and I continue to use condoms or continue to abstain, what difference is it? I mean, so what if some people are making money off of it?
Well, first of all, circumcision is not without complications. It's a medical procedure like any other, and when you do it on an adult male, the amount of complications is much more than on an infant, because infants don't get erections, whereas adult males do. It is a surgical procedure. It's an invasive one, and it's not necessary. So right there, basically on a purely medically ethical standpoint, there's something wrong right off the bat. And again, you have the question of the compensatory behavior, which people are going to engage in. They're going to think, well, I'm protected more now because I'm circumcised, so I can engage in more risky behavior. That's going to happen to people, and the end result is because you're spreading this misinformation about how AIDS is spread, and you're not educating people on the best option, which is really the only option, which is to use condoms. You're just going to create more problems. More people are going to get AIDS. I mean, it's just that simple.
All right, so your appeal would be for people to focus on what you consider to be the more proven methods, and that would be condoms and possibly abstinence.
Condoms, the male latex condom, yes.
All right, well, that's wonderful, Bob, and we appreciate sharing your thoughts with us on that. Father's Day is tomorrow. Are you aware?
Yes.
Okay, now...
Call your dad, everybody.
What?
Call your dad, everybody. It's Father's Day. You gotta do that.
Definitely. Well, when we get back, Bob, I just want to get your thoughts on the role of fathers in this day and age. It seems like fathers are being marginalized, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on where you think that is going.
Absolutely.
Okay, stay tuned. It is Live and Kicking.
I'm unstoppable, 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 unstoppable.
And on the line from the United States, we have Bob O'Hara, who's the chairman of the African Circumcision Advisory Committee and news director at A Voice for Men. We spent a lot of time discussing the circumcision policy, the one endorsed and funded by the UN that, we have taken up as our health policy in fighting against HIV prevalence. Bob shared with us his skepticism about the studies, and he thinks using condoms is the way to go. Bob, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Bob, I had one guy call in, a guy called Michael, and he wanted to ask about the other benefits of circumcision that we're often told about, the issue of hygiene. Surely, if you lack a foreskin or if it is surgically removed, your hygiene greatly improves, does it not?
No, well, there's the argument that it reduces the risk of urinary tract infection, which is really not true. There's been a little data that suggests this, but it's just not cutting off part of your penis. And the other thing we keep on hearing is that it increases your risk of penile cancer. Now, penile cancer normally occurs in men over the age of 75, and it's a very, very rare disease. And the amount of the increase in risk is only associated with the amount of tissue that's actually removed. As far as the other hygiene concerns, that's an old school idea. Here in the U.S., circumcision began to become compulsory in the mid-1800s, and the reason that they did it was to keep boys from masturbating.
No, really?
It's true. Absolutely. Look it up. You look it up and look up. There's a Dr. John Kellogg who was very famous in the mid-1800s, and it was believed in the Victorian times that masturbating made you blind or made you sick in spite of this, all kinds of things. And the thing is doctors started making money off of this procedure. Well, after that, the whole masturbation thing went away. They came up with other ideas like, well, it's good for your hygiene and this and that and this and that. And all it is they're waving fears in front of the eyes of new parents, saying, "Hey, listen, this is good for your child." But what they're doing is it's just another unnecessary procedure that doctors make money off of. This has been going on for over 100 years now.
But what about aesthetically? I've had discussions with lots of women who tell me, in fact, they insist that they prefer for the men in their lives that they're intimately involved with to be circumcised. That they feel more comfortable with that. So how about that factor? Should what women think count in this?
If you're that concerned about what your wife or girlfriend feels about how your penis looks, then by all means get circumcised. But there are risks involved. And there's a lot to suggest you're going to be missing a lot, because the foreskin, believe it or not, is the most sensitive part of the male body. Now, when you're an infant and this happens to you, there's some suggestion that your body compensates for it. But when you do it, there's a lot of studies out there that suggest you're going to lose a lot of your sensation. And to be sure, there are a lot of girls that do like a man with foreskin too. So again, that's just a matter of taste. But whatever floats your boat, if it's consensual and you're an adult, if that's the reason why you want to get circumcised, that's your business. But that's not something that if I'm circumcised, if I were not circumcised, I don't think I would get circumcised because my girlfriend or any woman for that matter prefers a circumcised penis. That's just. Okay,
so you're based in the U.S. What do you care about the policies that are being implemented in Africa? I forgot to ask you earlier.
I and a growing number of people here in the U.S. and other people are very concerned about this policy and the fact that it's misguiding, and the fact that they're misleading people to think that this is a real effective way of reducing the incidence of HIV in the population. Because people are going to engage in compensatory behavior, and because you're just basically not telling people the truth or not giving them the real information, because knowledge is power when it comes to the spread of HIV, more people are going to get AIDS.
Yeah, but what about your agenda? Maybe there's money in it for you. How do we know you're also not motivated?
I'm not getting paid a single dime.
Yeah?
Not a single dime. I really believe that unless people come to their senses and counter this argument that circumcision helps prevent the spread of HIV, people are going to die. And there are some epidemiologists who are concerned that this could increase the number of new HIV infections by well over 1 million or 2 million.
Oh, dear.
It's truly something I feel that needs to be brought out into the light. There's been a lot of misinformation.
Okay.
There's a lot of very sketchy deals going on. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of political power involved. And really, I truly see that these people have the very last thing they care about is the well-being of people in Sub Saharan Africa.
All right,
I
so
believe that. And if you come to A Voice for Men and read my articles on the subject, you can just go there and look for African circumcision and search for it on our Voice for Men website. You can read the articles and you'll understand better why. There's a lot of information, more so that I could discuss
all right.
on this radio show, I think.
Okay, Bob, stay with us for just a bit longer. When we get back, we're talking about dads.
Sure.
Alive and kicking. Hello, baby. With Fat Boy.
From Naughty by Nature, this one is called A Holiday, and it's playing on your number one station, 88.2 Sanyu FM. Today's best music, and the show is Alive and Kicking. It's the show that starts the weekend. It's Alive and Kicking, baby. And my name is Fat Boy, a.k.a. FBZ in the hizzy. Tomorrow's Father's Day.
Jungle Boogie. Get it on. Jungle Boogie. Jungle Boogie. Get it on. Jungle Boogie. Jungle Boogie. But with the get down. Jungle Boogie. Jungle Boogie. Shake it around.
And this morning on Live and Kicking, I'm joined by Bob O'Hara, calling in all the way from the U.S. He's with Voice for Men to talk about issues pertaining to men. And I suppose he's just the guy to talk to with regards to fathers and Father's Day, the role of fathers in the world we live in today. Bob, are you on the line? Bob, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Fat Boy.
Excellent. Okay, so Bob, tomorrow's Father's Day. I wonder, it would seem to me when I look around that fathers seem to be marginalized in the family. There's a lot of talk about how mothers are so awesome. Mothers have all kinds of songs sung by popular artists dedicated to them. I mean, we hold mothers in much greater esteem, I think, as humans than we do fathers. And it seems that fathers are continuously becoming marginalized. In fact, the single mothers are increasing. Do you think there's still a point to celebrating Father's Day?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Fathers are very important. Here in the U.S., we're having a growing epidemic of fatherlessness here in the U.S. And here at Voice for Men, there's actually been a war, as many groups believe here in the U.S., all across Canada and the U.K. and Australia and India. We feel that there's been a concerted war being waged against fatherhood.
What do you mean? What do you mean a war against fatherhood?
Well, there's you talk about the marginalization, but also in our family courts here in the U.S. And in the U.K. especially. It's especially bad in the U.K. Fathers have father's rights to his children upon divorce or born out of wedlock are almost entirely dependent on courts. His rights to his children are dependent on the courts and by the goodwill of the mother. Fathers do not have access when their kids are taken away or taken out of their lives, and are oftentimes reduced to what essentially is, in a legal sense, nothing more than a sperm donor turned ATM machine. And that's not a father.
Sperm donor and ATM, but
it's a slave.
But Bob, isn't it true isn't it true though that mothers confer so much love upon her children, and when we're facing hard times, we all sort of want to go back and run to mom. It's been known that soldiers lying in a pool of blood as they gasp their final breath in the battlefield, they cry out for mom. So it seems to me mothers are viewed by most people to be the more caring parent.
Yeah, or the primary parent, some would say. But here's the some facts, very interesting facts that the National Institutes of Health here in the U.S. brought out. We do know that the role of the mother is very different, but they're both equally as important. And here's some facts about that I think everyone should know, that children who don't have a father in their lives are much more susceptible to all sorts of problems like mental illness, problems with the law, problems in school, problems, a whole social problems, and up into and including vulnerability to child abuse and child exploitation. The biggest factor that protects children from those things and provides a positive outcome is a biological father in that kid's life. Men have a particular role. Fathers have a role in socializing their children that many argue that is not fulfilled by the mother. It's very much a man thing. Kids need dads in their lives.
Okay,
they're
Bob,
much better off with them.
how about the fact, and this is a complaint we hear coming from the ladies, that men basically abandon them, and so this fatherlessness is induced by men because they're the ones that leave. So the mothers end up having to raise the children. And so if there are any negative consequences arising from fatherlessness, you don't think it's up to guys to man up and do something about this? Be responsible?
We got to think about some of the factors that contribute to fatherlessness. Here in the U.S., men don't have the same reproductive rights. We don't have the same control of our fertility as women do. So oftentimes a man who didn't want to become a father or simply is not capable of being a father is forced into parenthood by the state because they don't have reproductive rights. That's a problem. And also there's a lot of propaganda being thrown around. When you have a court system here in the U.S., and it's come down the pipe for Africa too, where basically the role of the father is basically to just pay child support, and he tries to get patient, but the court won't let him. It's easy, and also it costs a lot of money to contest this stuff in court here in the U.S., money that just simply don't have. So it's easy to point at this guy who may not have even wanted to become a dad in the first place, who's not ready to be a dad, or really wants to be a dad, but he can't have access to his kids because of these huge legal obstacles upon divorce or upon the instance that it's out of wedlock childbirth. It's easy to look at this guy, and non-custodial fathers don't have a voice in the media. Mothers do. Fathers don't. We don't listen to fathers because they've been marginalized.
Okay, so
it's easy.
right. They're
an easy target, and it's unfair. It's not fair. I'm sure if you talk to a lot of non-custodial fathers, they'll give you a much different story.
So, Bob, how do you think we should celebrate Father's Day? What's the best way of showing our appreciation for the fathers we have in our lives?
I think every individual, of course, is to reach out to their dad, whether he's in their life or not, and to really try to reach out and try to connect with him. Tell your dad if he raised you, tell him how much that you appreciate him and everything that he's done for you. And also, I think that we need to start countering all this anti-dad business that we see in our media. I think that needs to be challenged more. I think that there's a movement in place that's doing that right now here in the U.S. The men's rights movement is very serious about that. It's one of the key. The father's rights movement and the men's rights movement are really kind of one and the same thing here. We really need to start countering what we feel at A Voice for Men is the war against fathers and fatherhood. We really need to do that. I think that's how I'm going to understand.
Wonderful. Well, that's Bob O'Hara, the chairman of the African Circumcision Advisory Committee and also the news director at A Voice for Men. Bob O'Hara, thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing your thoughts with regards to the circumcision campaigns and also the role of fathers in our lives. I think it's been a great conversation, and I really appreciate you calling us all the way from the United States.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry for the mix-up earlier on. That was my fault. I didn't have my business together, but thanks a lot for having me on, Fatboy. I really appreciate it, and it was very, very nice talking with you today.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Sure. And hey, be trendy, be classy, and use Trust condoms to savor that sensual moment. Trust condom protection that you can trust. That's all the time we had for Alive and Kicking this Saturday morning. And don't forget, like Bob said, reach out to your dad and tell him how much you love him and appreciate him and how awesome he is. I think the more we did that, I think society will begin to appreciate the role of fathers even more. Bye.